Hi, everybody. It's Hannah. I wanted to talk about Bitcoin again without a tsunami coming because that feels good. And a short list of topics for discussion, I think, is going to be the state of information that you're receiving about Bitcoin, kind of like a tactical analysis of that landscape. And then a discussion about the halving schedule, the set issuance schedule, and there's an event that's called the halving with Bitcoin that happens every 4 years, and why this matters. It's not something that I was aware of for my first couple of years in Bitcoin, why it matters, and kind of how that pertains to the considerations that people are making these days, just kind of like approaching the space and feeling like they're priced out of Bitcoin. I have a lot to say about that, and saying things like, oh, XRP is going to replace the Swift banking system, and so I'm all in on that. Or, people getting that they need to commit some of their wealth to something outside of the US dollar, but having different kinds of information about what that should be, which actually pertains to the first subject, which is the status of the information that you're getting. Okay, so I'm just going to launch in on that. I wanted to make sure that you're aware, because you might not have thought this through, as we are the most advertised to generations that have ever existed ever on the planet. So being shilled this or that or the other is an experience that we're so familiar with, it almost becomes invisible to us. Of course we're being advertised to, and I just wanted to make sure that that out of all the people on the internet, myself included, that are talking about Bitcoin, none of them are being paid to do so. And we don't receive any benefit in any kind of direct way. There's no sponsorship that happens with this. Every single person on the internet that's talking about Bitcoin is doing so because they feel passionate about it and because they've had a good experience with it. There are lots of different cryptos, there are lots of different shit coins, and there are a lot of people talking about them on the internet, and many of those could fall under the category of marketing. That person is being paid something, either in that shit coin or in US dollars, to shill that to you, to convince other people. They're sponsorships, okay? The reason that can't be the case for Bitcoin is because there's no entity to sponsor us who want to talk about it. There's no governing body, there's no committee, there's no CEO, there's no marketing budget, none of that. So every single person is just doing so out of the volition, their self-volition, the experience that they've had, and wanting to share that. What does that mean in the informational landscape? If you're old enough to be watching this video, then you're old enough to have gone through an experience that is not quite like anything the human race has ever been through in terms of informational warfare and cognitive warfare, relative to, sorry to roast this old chestnut again, but the COVID jab. I think that a couple of years out from that now, I mean, if you can't see that those people who had an ability to differentiate between information and propaganda were in a far better position to negotiate something that was coming at us from all directions. And people who were not in a position to differentiate between information and propaganda find themselves dead, or with myocarditis, or wondering if they're going to have a heart event, or experiencing turbo cancers, or the meteoric rise of any of these other kinds of things. It was a bioweapon. And this video is not about that, but I'm just saying, your ability to look at the fog of war and to understand that things are coming at you all the time because you're the most marketed to person that's ever existed, all of us are, and to be discriminating about that is crazy important. And with Bitcoin, it is really simple because there's nobody who's paid to do this. So I just wanted to like kind of as a like, you know, like let's just set the stage right now. Like I think that matters. I think it matters a lot. Second of all, the halving schedule, this is something that I didn't really wrap my head around in my first couple of years in Bitcoin. I like could see that the number went up. I was like, number go up, like US dollar, not so much. Like my money in the, like I'm going to get really specific. Like my money in the bank stays the same number. My money in Bitcoin goes up. It goes up and down and up and down and up and down, but like powerfully it goes up. And like that was it for me. Like it literally was so simple for me, you know, and it took me a couple more years of engagement and starting to like really study Bitcoin that I started to learn about the kind of like back end operation of that. And this is because if you're old enough to be watching this video, for all of us, we haven't existed in a time that wasn't on a fiat standard, you know, where the government issues money. We're just like, okay, that's the money. We make the money, we spend the money gets taxed every which way. Everything seems to be getting more expensive. We're just like, damn, that sucks. But that's like normal for us, you know? So for us to have to like learn anything about that, typically it's like the orange pill, you know, getting into Bitcoin, where you're like, I want to learn about Bitcoin. Maybe you do, maybe you don't, but like you start to. And the funny kind of like rug pull of it is that you actually learn about the US dollar. You actually learn about fiat currency as a result of trying to learn about Bitcoin. Like Bitcoin itself is in a sense quite simple. The entire like complicated system that goes on with like fiat, which is not backed by anything and is issued by governments and is used to, you know, like in a certain sense kind of like surveil us and control us, that is complicated. So there's this kind of like learning both ways that happens once you get into Bitcoin. For anyone who's not interested in that, you don't have to be interested in it. That's the wonderful part. Like you could just like get some of your money over there and watch it go up, and then that could be it. You could just be there. Like that could just be the process right there. You know, it doesn't have to go further than that. Like you don't have to like mega dork out about this. Apparently, what is that test called? It's a personality test. I always want to call it Braxton Hicks or something, but I think that's a form of contractions, like fake contractions. It's Briggs-Myers, the Briggs-Myers personality test. For some, it has like 4 different kinds of like spectrums that it explores. Like people that represent like early adopters, myself included, that have gotten into Bitcoin, like overwhelmingly are this like INTJ type. Like that's the way our like brains are set up. So that's a whole deep dive I could go into, but it actually makes sense that not everybody's brain would like wrap itself around the concept of Bitcoin like right at the outset, you know, based on this kind of data, you know. So if you're in the Bitcoin space, congratulations. If you're not, I do want to, like, I think that I represent a valuable perspective. There are super smart people. They're the smartest people on the planet are talking about Bitcoin for free. Nobody's paying them to do that. They just want to. It's an incredible space, but it would be easy for me to say, like, I don't really feel like I have anything to contribute to the conversation. Like, I barely started learning about macroeconomics and like what's fucked up about fiat currency and all that kind of thing, like in the last, you know, 10 years or whatever, like getting myself further and further into Bitcoin, benefiting more and more so that I can support my lifestyle of having, you know, like a crazy elaborate bed like I always wanted to have when I was a little girl. I was like, I want to have a bed that looks like it's getting married. And my parents were like, well, you're gonna have a mattress on the floor, so enjoy that, you know. I have a bed that looks like it's about to get married now. Like it has like a full like wedding skirt thing and everything, and like I have like a bungalow in Hawaii. I live off grid. Like I like my job. I have a bougie little dog. I mean, I found her, but like, you know, like her like fancy food, that shit's not going to pay for itself. Like my bed getting married, all the linens and everything involved, like that's not going to pay for itself. Like I've had to figure out, like I'm pretty high maintenance, and I figured out how to be the person that unfortunately has to maintain myself. And Bitcoin has been a big part of that. I'm really grateful for it. You know what I mean? So in this space of people who are like, God, they're just like, it's like face melting, you know, the level of like information and like high level analysis and critique that you can get from people in the Bitcoin space. I'm like, I'm not that, you know. I'm of average intelligence across, you know, many data points. I'm probably like slightly below average in some ways, the ways that I'm not focused on. There's a couple things that I'm probably above average on, you know. But the fact is, like, you shouldn't and you don't have to be some kind of freaking genius or even an INTJ or whatever to be able to figure out how to like salvage your earnings and your income and your savings from a burning building, because it's a burning building and there is an exit. And like some people are like standing there waiting for the fire marshal to come like put out the fire or whatever, and it's like there's an exit, you know. Like you don't have to be like real fucking smart to figure that out, you know. So, you know, I try to share what I can, and I've told you guys about my just my level of like armchair philanthropy relative to just trying to get like everyone I meet everywhere, like if it can be a conversation, if it's relevant at all. Everybody has the same complaints. I don't meet anybody that's not like, damn, everything's getting really expensive. I mean, we're all in the same boat here, you guys, you know? So I feel like I have something valuable to contribute to the conversation. I try to just like gauge their relative level of, you know, being willing to receive that. And unfortunately, a concept like the halving actually kind of has to come into that, because you get this kind of thing where people are like, well, crypto seems like the dollar is doing this, so maybe I need to get into crypto. And I'm like, Bitcoin isn't crypto. Like, that's so cringy, but that, you know, that it's all the same. It's all the same to them. Why wouldn't it be? You know, I mean, if you're watching this and it's all the same to you, like, why wouldn't it be all the same? It's just fucking different flavors of magic internet money. And you're like, the flavor called Bitcoin seems really expensive now, and then people are saying this and that about Ethereum and XRP and Cardano and different things, you know. It's like, that's not a crazy perspective at all. When I'm talking to people, what really matters a lot for all of us is their relative level of like healthy skepticism about like the government and banks. Like, at this point, this is, what are we? This is like early August of 2025. Like if you're a person who hasn't developed like a healthy skepticism about the powers that be and the job that they're doing, running things, then you know, you need to catch up, you need to pick it up. But most people have figured out like something's wrong, you know. And some people have figured it out all the way to the point where they're, you know, they're like stacking precious metals and like doing different kinds of things like that, right? You know, so but the crypto space can be, it's weird, you know, for a society that's as pretty much like digitally literate as almost all of us are right now, like in at least basic ways. Like I mean, like even like really sweet boomers that I meet and stuff, like that they're not trying to do all that. Like they're on social media, like they can do this stuff. They use their phones, they have smartphones, you know. There's still this kind of like wall when it comes to because we, you know, our personal finances are like, our limbic system is tied into that. That's like life or death. Like we're very hesitant to commit our resources. So not for the first time, yesterday, I found myself explaining, I busted out my chart and everything, explaining like the halving schedule and the set issuance schedule to my friend Ivan, who he's a kooky guy I found off Craigslist that built my storage shed for me. And then it's been wonderful to be able to like have him come over like once every couple months or once every couple weeks or something and like help me with all of this goddamn jungle and stuff that I'm dealing with, because I'm just here in Hawaii on my own with my little dog and I need help with things, you know. And so he's like all disenfranchised with the banks and the government, and you know, he's just like trades like labor for cash, and he's a real savvy guy. He's a real kooky savvy guy. The best people are kooky. Like if anybody ever described me as kooky, I would consider it such a compliment. But you know, so a couple months ago I offered to pay him he helped me with a big thing. Oh my God, such a pain in the ass, all the lava rocks around here. Anyway, I offered to pay him in cash or Bitcoin I said, I strongly recommend Bitcoin because number go up. That's it, you know, that's all you can say. And he was like, yeah, whatever. And so I set him up with a wallet and sent him some Bitcoin. And a couple weeks ago, I texted him a screenshot. I was like, hey, like the Bitcoin I sent you is worth $80 more than it was when I sent it to you. And he was like, whatever. It's just, for him, it's just like there's an app and it shows a different number now. That doesn't mean anything to him. You know what I mean? And I get it. It will. He's going to get there. You know, he's going to get there. So yesterday, like, he helped me with a bunch of stuff. And I was like, do you want me to pay you in Bitcoin or cash? I strongly recommend Bitcoin, you know, because I would like everyone that I deal with to be doing well and negotiating this time that we find ourselves in, this burning building that we find ourselves in. And he was like, you know, he was like, you know, my friend like lost all of his money in that. And I was like, he lost all of his money in Bitcoin. That's a thing that could happen. But I mean, if you like, it's volatile. Like if you like ape in at the top and then like get scared and get shaken out and it goes down and then you sell it all, then it's like, okay, that it's not a thing to trade. That's the, you know, you got to like wrap your head around this and like hold it long term. No one who's ever held Bitcoin during any kind of like bear market, bull market cycle, anyone who's held Bitcoin for at least 4 years, like on a sliding scale, if you look at the 16-year history of Bitcoin, if you take 4 years and you slide that like literally anywhere on that 16-year chart, everyone's profited within at least a 4-year time horizon, like often much shorter than that. But that gets into the psychology of like, are you speculating in Bitcoin because you want to then sell it for more completely fake printed money, or do you get that this is like the exit strategy and this is where we're going? You know, this is a process. This is like an evolution, you know, of like perspective, right? But every step along the way is obviously extremely valid. So he was like, you know, I don't know. It might have been, he was like, it might have been XRP. It might have been something. And I was like, okay, you know, I was like, I mean, XRP, for instance, they minted, you know, or they mined, they pre-mined, it's either 100 million or 100 billion. I never can remember. It's like a lot, a whole bunch, like all at once, like when the XRP committee or company got together and like, you know, if you guys do good and you guys can like provide a utility that like works in this transition between TradFi and DeFi, like I'm not trying to like specifically shit talk XRP, but they just made either 100 million or a billion, I can't remember, like right then, like okay, now it exists. We have invented this shitcoin, and now there's a whole bunch of them. And you know, and the marketing, I'm not even sure like how much of this is even like likely or true. The marketing about XRP, which is currently at like $3.15 or something like that, is that it's going to replace the Swift system. Like again, like is that something that, you know, I'm sure for marketing purposes, it's like helpful for us all to think that, because then people ape into it. And I know many people that they hold 0 Bitcoin, which is the wrong amount to hold, but they've like committed a lot of their wealth to XRP because that's their thing. If you ask them, they're like a plush doll that you push and it like has a thing that it says that you're like, why did you do that? They're like, it's going to replace the Swift banking system. And, you know, maybe it will. We already have like a way to get money around like on rails that like there's never been a single fraudulent transaction in the entire history of Bitcoin that's like, you know, extremely robust, and anyone with an internet connection, a smartphone, can like send any amount of money or receive any amount of money from anywhere in the world with like literally no middleman. Pennies, you know, for pennies. And you know, so I have a really hard time giving a fuck about the Swift system like at all, let alone like what shitcoin is going to replace it. Like I'm like, kill it with fire. Now, you know, I'm not a macro economist. Like, is there going to be some kind of future where we, you know, where we have like a Bitcoin based, because it's not going to be based on anything else, I'll tell you that, like a Bitcoin based dollar, and then we need some kind of like global distribution, transmission, like checking the homework system, and then that would be the, not predecessor, but what's the antecedent, like the thing after the Swift system, maybe that would be XRP as a utility. Like, I can't comment on that, okay? And there's probably really smart people that can. However, I know that the people telling me this shit, that XRP is going to replace the Swift banking system, I know they can't comment on it any more intelligent. Like, I know that they know less about it than I do, and I don't like know much about it. So this is where I find myself in this position of like explaining the halving schedule. Okay, so the basic deal with Bitcoin that like many people don't get, and many people who even hold Bitcoin, in whatever direct or indirect form, because there's the ETFs now and all these things, don't get this, is that there was a set issuance schedule like built into the open source protocol that without any committee or governance or CEO or anybody in charge of it, there's nobody in charge of it. It's like math. It's just like a virus released into the world, was just like set into motion. And it's a proof of work protocol. I know that doesn't mean anything to you, but it does. Proof of stake versus proof of work, like, means a lot. So part of the protocol, the open source protocol, was this set issuance schedule, where the mining of Bitcoin, which is extremely power intensive, so this is bound by natural laws and natural physics, and the cost of energy, whether that's a low cost or a high cost, or whether that's, nuclear, or whether that's geothermic, or whether that's hydroelectric, or like wherever that energy is coming from, like any kind of fucking thing on the earth that can get some kind of like turbine going to like make a generator go to like mine Bitcoin is bound by it's very, very expensive to create one Bitcoin. How expensive is it? Well, it was less expensive earlier, and it's more expensive now, and it will only get more expensive because of the halving schedule, because of the set issuance schedule. So every 4 years, the number of Bitcoins that can be mined every day, and this has nothing to do with the number of mining rigs that are out there. Like, literally everyone in the world could buy 100 mining rigs and get them mining Bitcoin, and it wouldn't change the issue. It's not gonna, it cannot be sped up, and it can't be slowed down. It can't be sped up, and it can't be slowed down. There are nodes. This is all decentralized. So there's like hundreds of thousands of decentralized nodes. There's millions, if not billions, of decentralized mining rigs all over the world that are very, very power intensive, bound by the natural laws of physics, and however cheap or expensive it is to produce energy in that region of the world, or whatever source they're using, that are coming together to create the Bitcoin, to mine the Bitcoin. Not 100 million or billion all at once, but churning, hashing. Now, the nodes and the rigs are kind of a confusing concept for people. And like the way I break it down really easy is that it's like, if you imagine like a slave galley where they used to Shanghai people and like put them in chains and like make them row a boat, so they're all in chains, they're all rowing. Obviously they have to like row in tandem, like in sequence, like they can't just all be rowing on their own little schedule as poor Shanghai slaves. So there would be, as far as I understand, like a big like guy with a drum, so everybody's like on the same rhythm rowing, right? And if he speeds up the drum because there's a problem in the ocean, they gotta like try to outrun a thing or whatever, then they're all gonna start rowing faster. He's got to beat the drum faster, or he's beating it slower to give them a break or whatever. So the drum master guy is the one who's like setting the pacing for everybody rowing. So in the world of Bitcoin, the nodes, hundreds of thousands of them all over the world, you could run a node, I could run a node, anyone can. This is not power intensive. Like the running a node part is just kind of like a thing that you can run. It's not going to suck a lot of power. The nodes are the drum masters that are keeping the block reward at every 10 minutes. The entire blockchain, and every transaction on it is audited every 10 minutes. There's never been a single fraudulent transaction in Bitcoin, and the entire system is so robust, and it actually becomes more robust with attacks. So that's what the nodes do. And then obviously you can probably get my analogy here, the mining rigs themselves, which are like hashing and actually like earning an income for the people who run them, like myself, those are like the Shanghaied slaves, you know, chained to the oars that are like rowing. So it could be like everybody in the world could be mining Bitcoin. It could drop in half, like people lose interest in mining Bitcoin, you know, whatever. Like however the level of like the volume, the hash rate, you know, the aggregate hash rate, however that fluctuates based on all these other things. The nodes, aka the drum master, are going to keep that issuance schedule, that pacing at every 10 minutes. Okay, so that is what creates what we can say every day. Like right now, every day there are 450 Bitcoin mined every day. No more, no less. If the hash rate increases because there's more rigs that come online, then the nodes are gonna increase the difficulty of essentially like the math equation that's happening to keep it at every 10 minutes, to keep it at 450 Bitcoin per day per the block reward right now. Right? Does that make sense? So what the halving is, though, is that there's only ever going to be 21 million Bitcoin. Those weren't created overnight, and they're not all. There's like, I don't know, like 19, 20 million in circulation right now. It's an exponential scarcity model where the amount of Bitcoin that can be mined every day gets cut in half every 4 years. So we just had the halving in 2024 in April, and we're not going to have another halving again until 2028. So for this entire cycle, this entire 4-year cycle, there will be 450 Bitcoin mined per day. Right now, the uptake, I mean, this is kind of just like a little side tangent, but like the uptake from like all these ETFs and BlackRock and nation states and everybody everywhere like buying Bitcoin, there's like, you know, sometimes up to like 11,000 purchased per day, or even 13,000, you know, coming out of the reserves that the exchanges were holding. So the uptake of like the demand is like far, far, far greater than the supply right now. And that's what's, you know, drives the price going up. But anyway, in 2028, what's going to happen is that from that halving on, there will only be 225 Bitcoin mined per day for that next 4-year cycle until 2032. And then it's going to be half of that, half of that, half of that. The mining of Bitcoin and the issuance schedule is going to continue via this exponential scarcity model all the way until 2140, at which point I will be dead, you will be dead, everybody watching this video will all be dead. This is going to outlive us. I mean, literally just like the mining, the creation of that initial 21 million Bitcoin, which those are not all in circulation, you know, unfortunately, like I've mentioned, due to self-custody issues and things like that. People dying without somebody else having the keys to their wallet. You know, we've already got maybe 5 or 6 million or something that they're just, you know, they didn't disappear. Like the blockchain can, like an audit can see that they're still there, but they haven't moved. They might not ever move. Like whoever had access to those doesn't have access to them anymore, or has passed away, you know. So that seems really mathy and nerdy and fucking possibly totally irrelevant, but it's like this exponential scarcity model is working in the opposite direction of what naturally happens with fiat, because when you have a fiat currency that's not backed by anything, then the only way out of problems is to like print your way out of problems, and so it becomes a fiat death spiral. And this has occurred with every fiat currency that's ever existed. So what's happening to the US dollar is like nothing unusual, and all the other dollars, all the other currencies in the world are pegged to that. So like when you see, you know, I mean, I think in 2024, like the Zimbabwe stock market was seeing like 903% returns or something. Like, how much would you love to have a 903% return on some stocks? You know, sounds awesome. Is it awesome? No, it's not fucking awesome, because in Zimbabwe, they've been having to print currency even faster than we've been having to print it here to try to keep up with, you know, the death spiral. So, like, Bitcoin going the other way with a halving every 4 years, a set issuance schedule that's going to literally outlive us, that is decentralized and can't be co-opted, and it can't be sped up, and it can't be slowed down, where it's becoming like scarcer and scarcer. And if there's anything to understand about economics, it's to understand that like scarcity equals value and abundance equals plummeting value. So that's it. That's all you need to know. So like that every 4-year halving schedule and that exponential scarcity model playing out over a long, timeline essentially acts as like a screw that's like turning the value of Bitcoin up. The intrinsic value of Bitcoin. Everybody that's out there saying Bitcoin has no intrinsic value hasn't spent the kind of like paid the kind of money I've paid for my electricity bills every month to make it. Like I said, it's tied back. Ethereum, XRP, like anything else, like how much does it cost to produce one? But they made it on a computer, some version of that. Bitcoin is harnessed to the reality of real world resources and the generation of real world power, just like us powering our homes. Like there's a lot of different ways to do it, but you gotta do it. It's gotta be translated, somehow. This is kind of like an interesting side point that hasn't come up for me in discussion a lot, except it did yesterday with Ivan, because he's just as kooky as I am, and I really enjoy that about him. Like, for a long time, particularly, I mean, okay, let me just frame it this way. We already had Tesla. Okay, in the 1800s, we had Tesla, who like solved energy, apparently. I mean, I wasn't there, but it seems like this motherfucker like figured it out, and like we could all just have like really cheap or free energy. But Edison had the backing and stuff like that, and we do this where it's not in the interests of the powers that be, or the reptiles that be, or whoever they are, the elites, the pedivores, whatever you want to call them, the powers that be. It's not in their interest. They're not going to aggregate wealth, and suck our blood. Like, they can't suck as much of our blood as fast as they want to suck our blood, literally or metaphorically, without depriving us of the kind of like natural, normal technological advancement that would occur and should occur with people like Tesla. And there's lots of people that have come up with like car engines that will run on water, and they're like on the internet, they're like, look guys, I figured this out, and then like boom, they suicide themselves, or they're just like gone, they're just like out of the picture, they just like mysteriously die. Like, you have a very short combat lifespan if you're a person who gets around the petroleum industry. So yeah, so Tesla's technology didn't make it to us, but this is what I want to talk about. Like, Bitcoin, Michael Saylor's, famous for saying many things. Like, one of the things that he said is that he's the CEO of Strategy. Might want to look into him. Bitcoin solves all the rich people's problems, and it solves all the poor people's problems. It's a really interesting thing. So whereas in the landscape, like the power struggle, which is really like a class struggle, I mean, they weren't wrong about that, of like disenfranchising all the poor people, and like making it so that everything we need to do, we need to eat, we need to drink water, we need to pay our bills, we need to keep the lights on. They're just like squeezing us and squeezing us and squeezing us. We got to drive our cars, we got to put fuel in our cars, every single thing represents like so much money out of our pockets, let alone taxation, because that's the best way to have us in our little like slime pods in the matrix, and just like use us as human batteries to like suck everything from us. Like, that's how it's all set up to be. It's not a bug, it's a feature. But then what Bitcoin represents, like on a really, like if you really step back, is like a complete upset of the incentive landscape for the rich people and the poor people. I mean, I'm in Bitcoin, and BlackRock is in Bitcoin, and Bitcoin is a closed system. There can only ever be 21 million. They can't be printing more Bitcoin every time they need to stop death spiraling. It's a closed system. And what that like literally means in terms of like incentives and like the reality of it is that BlackRock works for me. Everything that BlackRock does that adds value, market value and market cap to Bitcoin benefits me directly. And that's, it's weird to like find yourself not on the same side as some of the most sketchy like NGOs and entities and stuff like on the face of the earth, but to be like, we're in the same incentive system now. If you're in Bitcoin, you're in the same incentive system as everybody that's in Bitcoin, which is crazy. That kind of thing can't happen in fiat. Like, I'm in the dollar and BlackRock is in the dollar. Does that mean that I'm going to benefit from anything they do? No. Think about that, you know? So, what I personally have really kind of wondered about is, like, as Bitcoin upsets the incentive landscape and completely changes it in a way that is impossible to ignore for anyone on any level, like, what's going to happen with all of this suppression of cheap energy and free energy and energy innovation that's absolutely been happening? I mean, it's not just like, oh, I guess humans couldn't figure out how to, like, make energy better. Like, it's just, turns out it's just really fucking hard to make energy and it's really expensive. No, there's been an active suppression. It's just like what happened with the railroads, where, you know, I guess in the US we had like the most incredible railroad system ever, and then there was like the automobile, like, gasoline lobby, whatever all those guys were, you know, that like really like deconstructed that so that we all have to drive cars and like ride in airplanes. Like, we should be able to just get on a train and go anywhere. Like, there's no reason why we shouldn't be able to. It's just these interests, you know, these big interests. So with energy, I mean, it's like even huger than that. But what happens when everybody's kind of on the same side of trying to make it? I mean, if I pay 7.25 cents per kilowatt hour for my power, for my mining rigs, I don't have the volume of rigs that makes it so that I could be competitive for like a lower cost of power, or there's other like types of situations with cheaper power, but I don't necessarily want to get into that or whatever, you know. So that's what I pay. I mean, and I have to sell almost all of my Bitcoin every month that is mined in order to pay my power bill, but I still profit, and then that little remnant of profit goes up and up and up, you know. So it's like at every point along the way, it's still worthwhile. And there's things I'm working on to kind of like offset that power on the fiat side. But imagine, you know, imagine if I could get my power for my mining rigs, instead of paying 7.25 cents per kilowatt hour, if I could get that for half that. Like, oh my God, I'd be in the money, you know? And this is the kind of, like, on my little micro level that I'm describing for you, like, this is what the entire like world, like every powerful whale in Bitcoin is like looking at the same thing. I don't know, you know, maybe we'll just continue to pretend like Tesla never fucking happened and like this is what we have to do for power. But it might kind of get to a point where we're like, you know, it turns out we can build weird, crazy things that reach up into the sky and like contact the ether or whatever he had going on. Like, it turns out there's cheaper ways to get power. And as Bitcoin becomes more scarce per the exponential scarcity model and the set issuance schedule that cannot be sped up and it cannot be slowed down, no matter the power of any entity that might want to do that, because it's decentralized and you can't fuck with that except through a 51% attack, which even to launch that kind of thing would, you know, like, would take like many nations banding together and expending, I don't know, like hundreds of billions of trillions of dollars to launch a 51% attack on 51% of the internet, you know, like all over the world, to control that. And then like that would co-opt one you know, one block reward, and then the next 10 minutes I think the board would just be reset. Like, it's a pretty robust system, you know. And Elon Musk just today, or I just saw the tweet today, Elon Musk like asked Grok, because now people are starting to get concerned about the quantum computers, you know, like what's Bitcoin's like cryptography is basically called SHA-256, like that's the cryptography. Like, okay, what's the likelihood of AI and quantum computers like hacking Bitcoin, you know? It's kind of funny, nobody's asking AI and quantum computers like about hacking XRP. Anyway, sorry, I got a shit talk, but you know, like, it's just so much. It's like within the next 5 years, like there's like 0% chance. Within like the next 10 years, it's like there could start to be maybe some like incursions on specific kinds of wallets that have been like used a lot, like, you know, for like income outgo. Like, there's some like really specific dialogue going on about that. So, you know, this is I really liken Bitcoin to Noah's Ark, where the level of like the sheer amount of the how expensive it is to mine it, and how slow the mining is, and how intense the level of like security is, such that it's audited every 10, it's self-auditing every 10 minutes, you know. And it's so resistant to attack, and it's like completely decentralized. For the last, 16 years that it's been around, that kind of seemed like overkill, right? Which is exactly like I'm not a big Bible aficionado, but like Noah was building his ark, he received this like input that there was going to be a flood, and people were like, damn, that's a really big ark, and you're using a lot of resources, and that's like a lot of time, like what are you doing, making fun of him. And he was like, I know there's a flood coming, and then he was validated in that. And the flood that's been coming for money is quantum computing and AI that can easily hack anything. Like none of our money is safe, and Bitcoin represents this like arc that's like so fucking crazy secure that it's been confusing to everyone. It was built to solve a problem before that problem existed, which is kind of the mystery of Satoshi Nakamoto, So it's hard to explain the halving schedule to people. I don't know if I've ever done a good job of it, and I don't know if I did a good job now, but in terms of like the average person being like, okay, I can see that prices keep going up, and I might need to try to get into crypto, and I feel priced out of Bitcoin, whatever that means. I mean, I think that's kind of crazy. Nobody ever says that they're priced out of like a stock in the stock market. They're like, oh yeah, it's too high now, priced out. It's like, do you expect it to go up, or do you expect it to go down? If you expect it to go up, put your money in it. However much like one share costs, like who cares, there's a weird way that people will think a thing to like dismiss getting some money into Bitcoin, but they won't think that thing about anything else they put their money into, But anyway, so people like kind of negotiating this thing for the first time, they're like, oh, well, XRP is going to be the next, or it's going to replace the Swift banking system. Or, Ethereum. Like, I get, again, like all of these, everything but Bitcoin, which is a proof of work protocol, is just hashing. It takes a long time, takes a lot of power, takes all of that to like make more Bitcoin. All these other shitcoins are their proof of stake principle, or there's some that are like apparently kind of like a hybrid, or like in some sense they're like a proof of work, but there's two different things here. There's Bitcoin and then there's everything else. And like for people to really consider like putting a significant chunk of their wealth, because they're suffering and they're scared and they're desperate and they feel priced out of Bitcoin or whatever, like they don't think that that's the way to go, and they're really considering committing some resources to these other coins. I mean, I just can't emphasize enough, like the people on the internet talking about that, they are paid shills. They are paid to do that. They are sponsored in doing that. Largely these coins were like created overnight by magic. They're like fiat coins. Like, I mean, we call them crypto, but it's like there's two different like absolute like principles at work here. And until you really get how like crazy this whole like Bitcoin mining, exponential scarcity going on until 2140, hash rate that just keeps going up, nodes that keep controlling it, self-auditing every 10 minutes, that's why I feel comfortable committing resources to Bitcoin. You know what I'm saying? That's why I'm like on a Bitcoin, like I live my life on a Bitcoin standard. Like I make an income in Bitcoin. That's why I'm like all the way over there. And I'm down to speculate. Like I hope XRP does go up. Like my family has XRP. It's been great. It's like, doubled in that time or whatever. Like that's great. That's a speculative asset. And if we can make money off of it, awesome. If you can make money off of it, awesome. But it's not a store of value. There's you know, like this is something that I think like really, really matters to people as they're increasingly getting scared and committing resources to other kinds of things, you know? Like, no, nobody, for some reason, I mean, I think it's really interesting, but apparently nobody wants to spend, you know, hundreds of hours or at least 100 hours or whatever on YouTube, like learning about these kinds of things. But you know, if you're like, whoa, like what is all this? Like, really, really find out what proof of work means. Find out what proof of stake means. Find out the difference between those two things. Find out what the issuance schedule is. Like, was it last year, North Korea, some kind of like they like hacked something. They like stole a bunch of Ethereum. Like North Korea stole a bunch of Ethereum. I want to say it was like millions or billions of dollars worth of Ethereum. Again, with the millions and billions, I kind of forget, but it was North Korea. And what did they do? They immediately cashed it in for Bitcoin. They did they hold the Ethereum? Did they sell the Ethereum for XRP? Did they sell the Ethereum for Cardano? No. They sold the Ethereum that they stole somehow from a wallet or whatever, wherever it came from, and they bought Bitcoin because they're not dumb. They're not dummies, you know. But in the meantime, there was this really interesting thing that kind of came up where it was like Ethereum bros, like the Ethereum committee, the Ethereum company, because that's a thing. They all have, you know, and devs, like tech devs, like God bless them, you know, like it takes a lot of like all God's critters got a place in the choir. Like it's going to take a long time and a lot of crypto development infrastructure to build up and, you know, help us all negotiate this transition from TradFi to DeFi. This is what's happening. The future is digital. Like I get all that. And I guess I sound really negative. So I don't mean to, but you know, there was some pressure on like Ethereum Incorporated to like roll back the Ethereum blockchain, you know, to like make it so that the coins that North Korea stole were valueless, to reverse this fraudulent crime that had happened. You know, so that would be cool. You can't do that with Bitcoin. I mean, if your Bitcoin gets stolen, then it's just gone. There's no rolling back that blockchain. Like there's no one that can do that. There's no entity that can do that, you know? That's why self-custody is like really, really real. But yeah, just imagine, you know, if like this is the same exact way that the US dollar has been weaponized. Like, you know, we get ourselves pitted against Russia under the like Biden admin, and then we start like Russia had reserves here that were at safekeeping because the US dollar hegemony is supposed to be like the global reserve asset, and it's not supposed to be weaponized, even if we're in a political tete-a-tete with another country. But like we're backing Ukraine because it's a proxy war, and so we start seizing Russian assets that were in the safekeeping of the US dollar, of a currency that's not ever supposed to be politicized or weaponized, like the currency itself, you know, and seizing the property of like Russian oligarchs and stuff like that. And it's like Russia figured out real quick, like US dollar ain't a safe place to be. Like the whole world is figuring out, like, okay, the US is like acting in a very unpredictable, volatile fashion right now, under the Biden administration, certainly. And I mean, what Trump's doing with tariffs is awesome. That's just like the shit you're supposed to do to like negotiate, right? But I'm talking about like literally weaponizing the currency that might be awesome in the short term, but that's like so destructive to the currency, which I was kind of cheerleading because I'm like, fuck the dollar, burn it down, kill it with fire. But you know, that's not good. You're not supposed to be weaponizing the currency. You're not supposed to try to be, you know, military industrial complex, like forcing everyone to be in the currency and collapsing all the governments that refuse to have a central bank and like get on that currency, but then at the same time weaponizing the currency. It's like freaking pick one, you know? So that's what happened with that. Weaponizing the dollar. So back to this like North Korea thing with the Ethereum, you know, there's a lot of pressure to say like roll back the Ethereum blockchain. That's exactly what that is now you're weaponizing a currency. It's supposed to be just like if you hold Ethereum, then you have the value of that Ethereum, whatever that is. Unless somebody decides to roll back the blockchain. You know, if North Korea stole it, well, I think we can all agree like they shouldn't have done that or whatever. But now, what if I get some Ethereum and it turns out somebody somewhere disagrees with me or my politics or something I said on social media or how I got it or whatever? Am I going to roll back the blockchain and take my Ethereum away from me? Now you get into all that, you know? And the other alternative is not to do anything and just let it ride. And you know, that's what they did. And then North Korea turned around and bought Bitcoin with it, which should really tell you something. North Korea didn't feel priced out of Bitcoin. So, you know, those are some ideas. Those are some things. Those are some like kind of like specificities that you might not have thought of yet, or maybe a different angle on them. So I hope you enjoyed, and I hope you have a good day. Okay, bye.